characters, or the role-playing I got to do in between each mission. But in Mass Effect's case, it was digging deeper and deeper into a universe that had utterly captured my soul. A series that once you play, you won't ever forget about, and one that shows us just how great and how captivating our imaginations can be. Nowadays, the phrase RPG or role-playing game seems to have lost a lot of its original meaning. It used to be in reference to games that focused on choice, consequence, meaningful character design, progression, and dialogue, along with deep systems of combat or world interactability. But for a lot of recent RPGs in our modern era, they play more like an action-adventure title than any of the great role-playing ROMs of old. Baldur's Gate 3 is one big exception, because this game is all about putting the role-playing back in role-playing games, and is shaping up to be a worthy successor to what many consider some of the greatest games of all time in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. These worlds are based on the Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms campaign, and take us on adventures fighting demons, solving puzzles, and crafting our own journeys however we see fit. But you see, the best part about the world of Baldur's Gate 3 specifically isn't the lore or the nice graphics and presentation. If anything, a lot of the tropes in Baldur's Gate are quite generic, with standard orcs, goblins, ogres, trolls, and more. And while it does have now decades of world building from some of the best writers in the industry, the real genius of Baldur's Gate 3 comes from how its world was designed. Each and every encounter you get into in the game is hyper-focused on giving you options. Choice, but this time with a real consequence. If you play as a drow in game, you might be able to completely bypass some of the goblin enemies early on because they're so scared of you, but as any other race, you might be met with immediate aggression. As a race of smaller stature, like a gnome, you could stumble upon a small hole leading to a secret underground passage of kids who steal to survive. But as another one of the taller races, you would need to find another way in. If you play as a druid, you can transform into massive and scary spiders, and then go through dialogue as these different monsters, which completely changes how scenes play out and how everyone reacts to you. You can throw a fireball at a web holding a creature up, and watch as it falls down a massive hole to its death, after which you can cast Featherfall and have your whole party float down to find it, only to stumble upon an ancient cavern deep underground full of glowing and talking plants. Maybe more than any game world ever, the world of Baldur's Gate 3 actually feels closest to the experience you would truly have at a Dungeons & Dragons table in real life with friends. No matter what insane and wacky ideas you come up with the tools at your disposal, there's a believable reaction in the world that makes it fun and interactive. Every choice you make in game can drastically affect not only the world around you, but the story that you will tell and the adventure you will go on. No two playthroughs of this game will be the same, and that's not just because of binary dialogue choices that result in one of two outcomes, like most popular RPGs like Mass Effect and Fallout New Vegas. You can do things like steal something off of a counter, which an NPC will then react to, which can spin off an entirely new quest line, resulting in things you otherwise would have never seen. It's much more dynamic than any other RPG I've ever played. And that's because choice in Baldur's Gate 3 isn't something presented to you. It's something you create dynamically on the fly, by thinking of different ways to use spells and actions that you have chosen for your character to solve puzzles in an infinite amount of ways. It feels more like a theme park, a dungeon master's table, than it does any other game out there. You aren't spoon-fed answers or forced to take specific paths. Instead, it feels like a blank easel on which you get to paint your own story. And this only works because of just how reactive and dynamic this world feels, with cutscenes or feedback on every action you take. And that's the key thing that makes the world of Baldur's Gate 3 so captivating. I remember a moment at the start of the game when you first wake up on the beach and find one of the NPCs you talked to earlier in the prologue. And if you have a spell that allows you to transform into any of the other races to trick characters, you can transform into a Githyanki, a race she hates, and watch as she starts freaking out about how so many of your kind have been showing up, only for you to later reveal it was all a trick the whole time. The game accounts for extremely niche situations like this, and even provides entire cutscenes and dialogue to account for it. Now imagine an entire game that takes hundreds of hours to fully complete, where you get moments like this the entire way through. To me, maybe more than any other game on this list, this is the type of world that video games should be all about and strive to be. Because even though I tend to enjoy sci-fi and less generic universes or stories, a world that radically realizes you and feels this alive can't be beat. Outer Wilds is one of the most enchanting experiences in a game, well, ever. And while I personally have a gripe with some of the design decisions of this cult classic that many others see as perfection, I can't deny that the world on offer here, the story it tells, and how its mysteries and secrets slowly unravel before your very eyes, result in an unforgettable experience that every gamer should give themselves the pleasure of at least trying. And that's because the world of Outer Wilds is the most unique I've ever seen in a video game. At the start, you awake on a small planet home to strange aliens that you call friends. And slowly you uncover that you're trapped in a never-ending cycle where every 22 minutes your local sun goes supernova and wipes out everything you know and love, only for you to awake again and do it all over. The real brilliance of Outer Wilds, though, is how you slowly, bit by bit, one 22-minute run after another, uncover the secrets behind this beautiful and immaculate world and why everything is happening. Every time you step into that spaceship and first launch into the sky, you're going on yet another adventure into the great unknown. You might stumble across a planet whose entire inside is a hollow nothingness of quantum infinity. You might find a planet that is slowly being swallowed whole by a black hole as you try to traverse its wobbly foundations. Or you might even just come upon a man in the furthest corners of the galaxy sitting back and playing his banjo, well aware of the ruin that awaits him, but accepting that fate and leading with optimism in the face of utter death. The real twist of this world, though, and what makes it so great, is that as time passes on each of these runs, you slowly uncover the secrets of the universe. Time passes and things change. Going to one planet at the start of the 22-minute cycle might result in you finding some doors or hidden passageways that later in the cycle get covered up with mounds of sand and debris from another nearby planet. Certain areas can unlock or become closed off with time, and even more so, solving many of the puzzles requires you having a fundamental grasp of that concept. And at any time, you can simply get in your spaceship, take off, and go anywhere in your small little galaxy. It's that freedom to forge and piece together the journey on your own terms, and the agency you have in each decision you get to make that makes every playthrough feel like its own. One of the most memorable moments for me on my first playthrough was seeing something behind a massive sheet of ice on a comet I had just parked my ship on. Realizing that based on its orbit around the sun on the galaxy map, maybe I could sit and wait until it passed the sun partway through the cycle. And lo and behold, when I did, something beautiful happened. The ice melted away and I sunk into the hidden abyss in the middle of this massive rock. And inside here, I slid through ice tunnel after ice tunnel, probably millions of years old, to finally uncover one of the grand secrets and reveals of this game that helped lead me to uncovering even more after I died in an inferno at the end of that run. That's what Outer Wilds is all about. A lot of other worlds and games, especially the open world ones, like to brag about how they have so many different things to discover and search around for in the environment. But maybe more than any other game I've played, Outer Wilds actually lives up to that promise. My main issue with it is that it wasn't dynamic enough and it was all pre-planned. However, that first run through the game without knowing that plan is such a magical experience. Finding out the secrets of an ancient alien race called the Nomai that harness powers that are difficult to even fathom. Slowly solving puzzle after puzzle until you unearth the secrets that seemed impossible for you to do when you first started playing. All to the backdrop of a universe that sits so silent yet does not stand still. It's a game world that begs for you to master it, to learn each and every part of it, to discover what's out there and be rewarded for it. If you like discovery, intrigue, and a story told in your own mind, then Outer Wilds might just have one of the most captivating worlds ever put in a game. So do yourself a favor, and if you haven't yet, play what might just be your favorite game of all time.